You know that moment when everything you've poured your heart into just gets ripped away from you? Yeah, that moment. I remember standing in the glass-walled meeting room, my heart pounding so loud I was sure everyone could hear it, but no one was listening. Instead, they were busy looking anywhere but at me. "We appreciate all you've done, but moving forward, we've got to optimize our team," my boss said with this fake, apologetic smile plastered on his face. Optimize? Seriously? Was he trying to tell me I was being fired in Silicon Valley jargon? I stared at him, barely breathing. "You're optimizing me out of the company after everything I did." Cleared his throat awkwardly, adjusting his cufflinks. He wouldn't look me in the eyes. "It's strictly business. You built something incredible here, but we need to scale in a new direction." A new direction, right? A direction where there wasn't room for me. I built this place from nothing, literally nothing. When I started, we had no investors, no processes, and no hope. It was just his wild ideas and me, fresh out of college, drowning in student loans, desperate for a chance to prove myself. I'd spent months living on ramen noodles in a tiny studio apartment where the heater barely worked. I remember nights curled up under 3 blankets, typing until my fingers cramped, creating internal processes, drafting proposals, chasing down every potential investor. The dreams were big, but the bank balance was small, and every time the landlord knocked, anxiety twisted my gut. But I stuck with it. Why? Because I believed in what we were building, or at least I believed in my role in it, and that belief drove me. Was Charming the visionary who talked big ideas, but execution, that was all me. "You're the backbone," always told me. "We wouldn't have gotten this far without you." So I trusted him. I never thought to question his loyalty. As the startup grew, my sacrifices became invisible. Late nights and early mornings blurred together, weekends were just extra weekdays. Friendships faded, replaced by a relentless drive to build something meaningful, and finally, after countless pitch meetings, sleepless nights, and enough coffee to fuel a small army, investors started saying yes. Big checks started rolling in. We finally moved out of the shabby, cramped office into a gleaming space downtown, bought a new Tesla. The team expanded. Life was good for everyone, it seemed, except me. Maybe I should seen the warning signs, the little comments like, "Why don't you let someone else handle this client meeting?" Or maybe take some time off, relax a bit. At first, I thought was just looking out for me. It felt like kindness. Now, standing here, watching them avoid my eyes, it was painfully obvious it was anything but. "We'll provide you with a good severance package," he added, shifting uncomfortably as he pushed a thick envelope across the sleek conference table. "This should help ease the transition." Ease the transition? Like it was that simple. Like I was just some piece of furniture that had become inconvenient to keep around. I opened the envelope slowly, fingers trembling despite my best efforts. A check, generous by most standards, lay inside, enough to silence someone who hadn't poured their soul into this company. But for me, it wasn't about money. It was about respect, integrity, and everything I'd invested, time I couldn't get back, ideas that built the foundation of our success. My voice shook when I finally spoke. "This isn't right. You can't just erase everything I've done here." Sighed, irritation flickering behind his composed facade. "It's done. Sign the papers, move forward. You're talented, you'll land on your feet." I felt the tears threaten now, hot and humiliating, but refused to let them fall, not here, not in front of them. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and looked around at the faces of my colleagues, people I'd considered friends. Most of them suddenly fascinated by the table, their phones, anything but me. Fine, if they wanted to pretend this was just another optimization, another strategic move, I'd play along for now. But deep down, beneath the sharp ache of betrayal, a fierce resolve was already forming. I was young, only 26, and maybe they thought they could dismiss me easily, replace me without consequence, but they had no idea who they'd just cast aside, no clue about the fire they'd ignited inside me. Standing there holding the envelope, I knew one thing for certain: this wasn't over, not by a long shot. As I walked out of that glass room, my heels echoing down the polished hallway, I wasn't leaving defeated. No, I was already planning, already scheming. They'd see me again, just not in the way they expected. And guess what? By the time I was done, they'd realize exactly who had built this company and exactly what it meant to lose her. You ever pour so much of yourself into something that it feels like your entire identity is wrapped up in it? Yeah, that was me and the startup. The moment I walked out of that sleek office building, the bitterness sank deep into my chest, but I knew I had to regroup. This wasn't just a setback, it was an opening act to a much bigger story. But before I dive into that, let me tell you a bit more about how it all started. After college, I was drowning, not just in student loans, but in anxiety, uncertainty, and a desperate need to prove myself. My parents were supportive but practical. Maybe it's time to get a real job, something stable, something safe. But safe was what drove me. I wanted more, much more. So when pitched me his startup idea, a platform to revolutionize online marketing analytics, I jumped at the chance. There was no funding, no team, just in his wild visions, but I saw potential. I craved the thrill of creating something from scratch, the satisfaction of seeing ideas turn into reality. My tiny apartment quickly turned into an unofficial office. Would swing by with grand ideas scribbled on napkins, but it was up to me to bring them to life. I built processes from nothing, client management systems, investor pitch decks, every little detail meticulously organized. There were no weekends, no evenings, just a continuous cycle of dreaming and doing. Every morning, my day started with a to-do list longer than the day before. Cold calling potential clients was brutal. For every positive response, there were 20 rejections. I'd pace my tiny room, headset on, heart racing, each call a battle between anxiety and determination. "Hi, this is from Growth Metrics. Do you have a moment?" became my daily mantra. Eventually, after countless calls and ignored emails, I secured our first client, an e-commerce startup desperate for better data. It wasn't a massive contract, but it was a lifeline validation that what I was doing mattered. I'll never forget the day I saw the payment hit our bank account. It wasn't much, but to me, it felt like millions. With each new client, my confidence grew. Loved the spotlight, the pitch meetings, the networking events, but once the clients were hooked, it was my job to ensure they stayed. I worked tirelessly, listening to their needs, building custom solutions, and ironing out every single kink. I knew these relationships weren't just about business, they were about trust. On those rare nights when sleep evaded me, I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, fear creeping in. What if this all failed? What if I couldn't pay rent next month? What if everything I was sacrificing, friendships, hobbies, sleep, was for nothing? But come morning, determination would chase away doubt. I had no choice but to succeed. Slowly, the startup began to gain traction. Investors who initially laughed us out of the room started to show interest. Those pitch meetings, once filled with awkward silences, now buzzed with excitement, thrived in these moments, painting visions of future success, but I was the one who kept the promises we made. Despite our growing success, recognition was scarce. Got the magazine profiles, the speaking gigs, the fancy lunches. Meanwhile, my work, the backbone, the processes, the client relationships remained quietly invisible. I'd hear colleagues praising's brilliant vision and my stomach would twist. I wasn't jealous, I just wanted acknowledgement for my part in this success. And then the turning point arrived, our biggest client yet, a multi-million-dollar contract with a prominent tech firm. Negotiations dragged on for months. I stayed up nights researching every detail about their operations, refining proposals, anticipating objections. Stepped in at the 11th hour, shaking hands, sealing the deal. Everyone celebrated him and I applauded too, smiling on the outside while my heart ached. "You're incredible," would reassure me after the meetings. "You're the reason we closed this." But these private acknowledgments never translated to public recognition. I was essential but invisible, vital yet overlooked. Maybe that's why it hurt so deeply when he finally cut me loose. I'd poured my heart, my mind, every ounce of my energy into building something real. I'd sacrificed comfort, relationships, my peace of mind, all for someone who saw me as dispensable once the money rolled in. But as I stood outside our shiny downtown office, clutching that severance envelope, clarity washed over me. Might have taken the credit, but the truth was, without me, he was just another smooth-talking entrepreneur with big ideas and no substance. Walking home, anger simmered inside me, fueling my determination. I wasn't done, not even close. This betrayal wasn't my end, it was a new beginning. I knew how to build, how to manage clients, how to create success. Now I just needed to do it again on my terms. And you know what? Maybe this was exactly what I needed. Maybe getting kicked out of my own company was the universe's harsh way of pushing me towards something greater. So I started plotting, not out of spite, but out of resolve. I was going to build something bigger, better, undeniable, and this time no one was going to overlook me. Little did know, his greatest mistake wasn't letting me go. It was underestimating just how powerful I could become without him. Have you ever had that moment of clarity where you just knew exactly what you needed to do? For me, that moment hit hard and clear the night I got home. The day showed me the door. As I sat alone in my small apartment, the silence heavy around me, I could feel the weight of everything I'd lost, but also, unexpectedly, the exhilarating potential of what I could still gain. The betrayal burned like a fresh wound, but beneath that pain was something else, a determination fiercer than I'd ever felt. I refused to be reduced to a footnote in the success story I'd created. No, I would rewrite the narrative entirely. I started small, scribbling ideas onto sticky notes and scattering them across my kitchen table. The startup had taught me many things, but most importantly, it taught me exactly how to build a successful business. From customer acquisition to operational management, I knew it all inside out. The first real step, reconnecting with the clients I'd built relationships with over the years. They weren't just business transactions, these were connections I'd carefully nurtured, genuine relationships founded on trust and reliability. might have shaken their hands at the finish line, but it was my voice they'd heard through countless late-night calls, my solutions that had eased their pain points, my assurances that kept them loyal. The morning after my dismissal, I picked up my phone, hand trembling slightly, heart racing. My first call was to a sharp and meticulous VP from one of our biggest accounts. Was no nonsense, but we'd built a solid rapport through months of working closely together. Her voice was warm but surprised. "What's going on?" "I've left growth metrics," I began carefully, "but I'm not done yet. I'm starting something new, something better." There was a pause, brief but significant. "I'm listening." I took a deep breath, steadied myself, and laid out my vision: streamlined analytics, personalized attention, and an unwavering commitment to their success. "You know me," I said firmly. "You know how I work. I'm offering something never could: real accountability, genuine partnership." Didn't answer right away. I could hear her tapping thoughtfully on her desk. "Called yesterday," she finally admitted. He sounded confident, maybe too confident. Something felt off. I told him I'd think about renewing our contract. My heart jumped. "Give me a chance to prove myself. You won't regret it." She sighed softly, then laughed a little. "You know what? I believe you. Send over your proposal. Let's talk tomorrow." That first yes sparked something powerful inside me, a renewed energy and unshakable confidence. I wasn't just reclaiming my career, I was reclaiming myself. With on board, the fear of starting from scratch faded, replaced by excitement and an urgency to move faster. Word spread quickly. I didn't need flashy advertisements or aggressive sales pitches. My reputation did the talking, and soon, my phone was buzzing with familiar voices wanting reassurance that I was still the one behind their success. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. A few clients hesitated, wary of shifting their trust so quickly. Every refusal stung, but I learned to channel that frustration into action, refining my pitch, sharpening my arguments, reminding them exactly why they'd worked with me in the first place. Predictably, didn't take kindly to my comeback. A terse email arrived in my inbox one evening, cold and formal, accusing me of breaching non-compete clauses and threatening legal action. My stomach churned at the sight of it, but I knew was bluffing. He might be a charismatic pitchman, but I'd always been the detail-oriented one. I'd meticulously combed through every agreement I'd signed. I was clean, and he knew it. "You're scared," I whispered to the screen, smiling grimly. Good, he should be. The threats only fueled my determination. I poured every waking moment into building my new business. Sleep was scarce, but motivation was abundant. Each new client who signed on with me was another victory, another confirmation that my vision had value, that my hard work had mattered. Soon enough, I needed help. Unlike I wasn't interested in being a lone star, I wanted a team built on trust and mutual respect. My first hire was Jen, a former colleague who'd watched silently from the sidelines as took all the credit. She knew firsthand the effort I'd poured into every deal. "I've been waiting for this call," she confessed enthusiastically. "I'm ready. Let's build something incredible." Together, we laid the groundwork for something remarkable. My apartment once again buzzed with energy, ideas, strategies, laughter. Jen's arrival felt symbolic, a clear message that I wasn't alone, that others had seen what I'd accomplished, even if had tried to hide it. One afternoon, as we wrapped up an intense planning session, Jen smiled knowingly at me. "Has no idea what he's unleashed, does he?" I shook my head, grinning despite myself. "Not even close." And I meant it, had sparked a fire in me, one that wouldn't burn out until I achieved everything I set my sights on. Revenge wasn't my main motivator. It was validation, recognition, the satisfaction of proving to everyone, and most importantly to myself, that I was more than capable of succeeding without anyone else's shadow obscuring my efforts. As my new company started to take real shape, growing stronger every day, I knew this wasn't just a comeback story. It was the start of something bigger, something unstoppable. And I couldn't wait for everyone, especially, to see just how spectacular it was going to be. Have you ever seen someone unravel when things start slipping from their grasp? That was, and the spectacle was oddly satisfying. As my new company, Streamlined Analytics, began steadily siphoning clients from growth metrics, its confident facade began cracking under pressure. And honestly, I relished every moment of it. I knew wouldn't take it lying down, and his retaliation came swiftly. One chilly afternoon, a formal notice arrived, official-looking, intimidating, marked with the bold header "Legal Action." My heart skipped a beat as I opened it, scanning lines dense with jargon. Was suing me for client solicitation and breach of confidentiality. I expected threats, but seeing it in black and white hit differently. My pulse raced, but I steadied myself. "He can't win," I whispered, reminding myself of the long hours spent meticulously reviewing every legal document I'd ever signed. But doubts lingered, gnawing at my confidence. Jen noticed immediately, setting down her coffee cup. "What's wrong?" "Suing," I said flatly, handing her the letter. She skimmed quickly, then smiled reassuringly. "He's bluffing. You haven't done anything wrong. He's just scared." But the fear persisted. I called a lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named. She was quick to reassure me, her voice steady over the phone. This is intimidation, nothing more. He's hoping you'll back down, you won't. His confidence calmed me, but facing a legal battle was draining. It required time, money, and energy, resources I desperately needed for growing my business. Yet I refused to cave. If wanted a fight, he'd chosen the wrong opponent. The lawsuit was stressful, but it also had an unexpected effect. Word got around, and former clients who'd been hesitant began reaching out, curious about my side of the story. One afternoon, I received a call from Michael, CEO of a large fintech firm we'd previously served at Growth Metrics. We've been following your situation closely. Honestly, his behavior has us concerned. Tell me, what exactly are you offering that he can't? I laid out my strategy carefully, emphasizing transparency, direct communication, and accountability, things had consistently lacked. Michael, you know me, you know my track record. Let me prove to you I can do even better than before. After a tense pause, Michael finally spoke. You know what, let's do it. I'm transferring our account to Streamlined Analytics, I trust you. The triumph was sweet but brief. His retaliation became increasingly desperate. He started spreading rumors about me in professional circles, insinuating incompetence, betrayal, even theft. At first, I laughed it off, thinking no one would believe such absurd claims, but some did. I noticed awkward glances during networking events, hushed conversations stopping abruptly when I approached. The negativity started to take its toll. One evening, exhausted from another long day, I sat at my kitchen table, the weight of smear campaign pressing heavily. Doubt crept in, whispering insidious questions. What if he's right? What if I'm not good enough? Jen found me the next morning, hunched over my laptop, staring blankly at the screen. Snap out of it, she said firmly. Is scared because you're a threat, don't let him break you. I looked up at her, suddenly clear-headed. You're right, he's scared and he should be. With renewed determination, I tackled every rumor head-on. I openly addressed claims with honesty, providing facts, evidence, and my track record to counteract his smear campaign. Slowly, perceptions shifted. Clients appreciated my transparency, and former skeptics began reconsidering their stances. This desperation only fueled my resolve. Streamlined Analytics flourished, securing contracts I'd once dreamed of at Growth Metrics. Each new victory was another nail in its metaphorical coffin, a clear signal that I wasn't backing down. Eventually, the day of the preliminary hearing arrived. I dressed carefully, choosing a suit that projected confidence, but inside, my nerves fluttered. Greeted me outside the courtroom, calm and reassuring. Remember, you've done nothing wrong. Stay confident, concise, and honest. Inside, I saw across the room, looking stressed, his typically immaculate suit slightly disheveled. Our eyes met briefly. His glare was pure venom. As the proceedings began, expertly dismantled each accusation. His lawyer faltered, clearly unprepared for the meticulous records and clear evidence we presented. Gradually, the tide shifted unmistakably in our favor. By the time we left the courtroom, I felt lighter, more confident than ever. Stormed out silently, refusing to acknowledge anyone. Jen squeezed my hand supportively. You did it, you're incredible. I smiled, relief flooding me. This wasn't just a win, it was validation, proof that integrity and hard work still mattered. The days following the hearing saw a dramatic shift. Clients who'd been waiting cautiously on the sidelines now eagerly joined Streamlined Analytics. His business dwindled, the consequences of his poor choices finally catching up with him. One evening, reflecting quietly in my office, I realized something powerful. This ordeal had strengthened me immeasurably. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. Jen poked her head through the doorway, grinning. Guess who just called? Another major client wants to switch from Growth Metrics. Fantastic, I laughed, feeling genuinely happy for the first time in ages. Let's keep this momentum going. As she disappeared down the hallway, I knew the storm wasn't entirely over yet, but I was more than ready for whatever came next. His betrayal had sparked something incredible in me, and now there was no stopping it. The best part? This wasn't just revenge anymore, it was the dawn of something truly extraordinary. You ever have one of those moments where you pause, look around, and realize you've built exactly what you always dreamed of? That hit me one bright afternoon as I stood in the center of Streamlined Analytics' bustling office. The space was alive with chatter, ringing phones, and a vibrant energy I'd always envisioned but never fully believed I'd achieve. Growth Metrics was fatting fast. His desperate attempts at sabotage had backfired spectacularly. Word of his unethical tactics had spread quickly, and clients he'd managed to retain initially were now abandoning ship, wary of associating with someone willing to cross ethical boundaries. I'd moved on, though. The bitterness had faded, replaced by the deep satisfaction of having created something lasting, something genuinely mine. The legal battle, now firmly behind me, had actually strengthened my position. It had shown everyone who was watching exactly what kind of leader I was: transparent, fair, and resilient. Jen walked up to me, tablet in hand, her eyes bright with excitement. "We've secured 2 more major contracts this morning. At this rate, we'll need to expand the team sooner than we thought." "That's fantastic," I said, genuinely thrilled but also slightly overwhelmed. Growth was exciting but brought new challenges. "Let's start outlining job descriptions. I want to maintain our culture as we scale." Jen smiled warmly. "That's why people want to work here. You've created a place that values integrity and respect. People feel it." That compliment warmed me deeply. My mind drifted back to the early days, the late nights, anxiety-filled mornings, the sacrifices. Every hardship had led here. I felt a sudden, profound gratitude for every challenge I'd faced, even the brutal ones. But life has a funny way of coming full circle. A few weeks later, a familiar name flashed on my phone screen. I stared at it, heart racing. My first instinct was to ignore it, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hello," I said evenly, steadying my voice. His voice was quiet, defeated. I didn't think you'd answer." "Neither did I admitted honestly. What do you need?" He hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "I'm calling to apologize." An apology was the last thing I expected. I took a deep breath, waiting. "I handled everything terribly," he continued softly. "I panicked and I made decisions I regret deeply. I've lost almost everything and frankly, I deserve it, but I wanted you to know I'm sorry." I paused, absorbing his words. "Thank you for saying that," I finally replied. "It means something." "You're impressive," he added quietly. "You always were. I should have seen it sooner." I felt a strange sense of closure wash over me. "Thank you. I hope things turn around for you." As I hung up, a surprising peace settled within me. The call hadn't fixed the past, but it had provided clarity. I'd moved past revenge. What mattered now was continuing to build, to inspire, and to thrive. The next months flew by in a whirlwind of growth and excitement. Streamlined analytics expanded rapidly, gaining recognition not just locally but nationally. I was invited to speak at industry conferences to share my story of resilience and integrity. Each time I took the stage, I saw faces in the audience light up, inspired not by my success but by the authenticity of the journey. One afternoon, as I sat alone in my office, sunlight streaming through the large windows, Jen entered, holding an envelope. "This just arrived." I opened it carefully. Inside was an invitation to a prestigious awards ceremony honoring innovative entrepreneurs. I scanned the letter, disbelief flooding me as I read the words: "Carter, founder of Streamlined Analytics, Innovator of the Year." I looked up at Jen, stunned. "Is this real?" She laughed, nodding vigorously. "Yes, you deserve this. You've earned every bit of recognition." The ceremony was surreal. Standing in front of a packed auditorium, holding the award, I felt a profound sense of fulfillment. "This journey wasn't easy," I began, my voice steady and clear. "I faced setbacks, betrayal, and moments of crushing doubt, but through it all, I learned that true success isn't about winning against others. It's about proving to yourself that you're capable, strong, and resilient." The applause was thunderous, but what meant most were the faces of my team in the crowd, proud, smiling, united. That evening, reflecting alone in my quiet apartment, I finally understood the journey's true lesson. It wasn't about revenge or proving wrong. It was about discovering my strength, reclaiming my self-worth, and building something meaningful. My story was no longer defined by betrayal, but by resilience and authenticity. I smiled softly, gratitude washing over me as I realized how far I'd come. Every painful step had been necessary. Each setback had shaped me into who I was today, someone confident, capable, and fulfilled. The phone buzzed softly, breaking my reverie. Jen had sent a message, simple but impactful. "Proud of you, this is just the beginning." Reading it, I knew she was right. This journey wasn't over. It was merely entering a new chapter, one filled with possibility, strength, and endless potential. And the best part, I couldn't wait to see what came next. Have you ever reached the top of a mountain and suddenly realized it's just a vantage point for even greater peaks? That's exactly how I felt the day after the awards ceremony. I'd thought that recognition marked the pinnacle of my career, but standing on that stage had opened my eyes to even greater possibilities. In the weeks that followed, my phone never stopped ringing. Investors were eager to discuss funding, partners were lining up for collaborations, and new talent flooded our inboxes, excited to be part of our team. Streamlined Analytics had become a beacon in the industry, not just for innovation, but for ethical leadership and workplace culture. One particularly hectic afternoon, Jen dropped into my office, tablet full of notes in hand, a gleam in her eyes. "Remember that big international client we dreamed of landing? They want to meet tomorrow." My pulse quickened. This was huge. A global expansion could propel us from a promising startup into a major industry leader. "Tomorrow, let's prep now." The meeting was a blur of strategy discussions, market analyses, and an exhilarating sense of purpose. As we wrapped up, the client representative shook my hand firmly. "We've been watching your journey closely. Your story, your integrity, it's exactly what we want to align with. Consider us your partner." Jen and I exchanged ecstatic glances as they left the conference room. This wasn't just growth, it was a quantum leap forward. Yet amid this success, something important tugged at the edge of my mind. After the meeting, I found myself lingering in my office, reflecting on the journey. I had achieved more than I ever imagined, but I realized that success had never truly been my goal. It had been validation, purpose, and the pursuit of something meaningful. That realization nudged me into action. I'd been invited to speak at a major women's entrepreneurship summit, and I decided it was the perfect platform to share what I'd learned. As I stood before the audience, hundreds of ambitious, eager faces, I chose transparency. "This isn't a typical success story," I began, feeling the room's attention lock onto me. "It started with betrayal, frustration, and heartache, but from those ashes, something extraordinary was born, not from vengeance, but resilience. The true measure of success isn't just about building a thriving company, it's about becoming a person who's strong and deeply fulfilled." The response was overwhelming. Women approached me afterward, sharing their struggles, inspired to take risks, reclaim their worth, and build their dreams. It was humbling and exhilarating. Back at the office, Jen greeted me warmly. "There's someone here to see you." I glanced up, startled. Standing awkwardly near the entrance was, looking subdued yet hopeful. I motioned him into my office. He spoke slowly, clearly uncomfortable but sincere. "Seeing your success, it's honestly remarkable. I made so many mistakes and you didn't deserve any of it." I regarded him thoughtfully, realizing how far I'd come. "Thank you, I hope you find your own path to happiness." He smiled faintly, nodded, and left quietly. As the door closed behind him, I felt another piece of closure fall into place. The past no longer had a hold on me. I'd truly moved forward. The next chapter of my journey was even more vibrant. Streamlined analytics expanded internationally, flourishing under a culture I fiercely protected, a culture of transparency, respect, and collaboration. We innovated relentlessly, earning awards, accolades, and respect across the industry. Yet my greatest joy remained mentoring new talent. I watched young professionals, ambitious and unsure as I'd once been, blossom into confident, skilled leaders. Jen stepped into a larger role, becoming COO, her vision and dedication an essential part of our continued success. One evening, as the sun set over the city skyline, I stood at the window of our spacious new headquarters. I recalled vividly the tiny, cold apartment where I'd started this journey, the sleepless nights, the endless challenges, but I wouldn't trade those memories. Every struggle had been crucial in building the life I now cherished. My phone buzzed, a text from Jen. "The team is waiting downstairs. We're celebrating another major milestone. Can't wait to toast with you." I smiled warmly, reflecting on the incredible journey we'd shared. Descending the stairs, I was greeted with cheers, laughter, and an overwhelming sense of belonging. These people weren't just colleagues, they'd become family, united by shared dreams and unwavering respect. Raising my glass to toast, I felt profound gratitude. "Thank you, everyone, for making this more than a business. It's a community, a family, a home. Here's to everything we've accomplished and all that's yet to come." Cheers echoed enthusiastically around the room, each face bright with optimism and pride. In that moment, I understood deeply. My story wasn't about the company I'd built, the recognition I'd received, or the revenge I'd once sought. It was about growth, personal, professional, emotional, and the strength we discover within ourselves when life pushes us to the brink. Late that night, reflecting quietly, I felt a serene certainty. The future was bright not because of external success, but because I'd learned to value myself, lead with integrity, and build a legacy rooted in resilience and authenticity. My journey wasn't over, it was just beginning. And standing confidently at this new peak, I was ready to face whatever heights came next, knowing I'd become someone I was deeply proud of. This truly was the sweetest triumph of all.